Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today, where we're going to be talking about the future of e-commerce AI. We're very excited to be here today. This is the second presentation that HawkSearch has been invited to from the SMX team. We're really excited to be back here again for another presentation on a whole new topic today, where we had such a great response from the community and from attendance to the event. We were very excited to be invited back and provide another topic of conversation. Today, we're going to be covering, of course, the future of e-commerce and AI. Really looking forward to getting into this with you guys, covering lots of different topics around that, and really giving you kind of a feel for where we're seeing this going. Of course, it always helps to have an idea of who is the one that's talking here. So, my name is Jonathan Meyer. I am one of the senior solutions engineers for the HawkSearch team, and been working with the Bridgeline team for a number of years now. I've been in this space for close to, a decade now at this point, and been primarily working with the Hawk Search tooling in that search space for close to 8 of those years. So, been around for a while. And one of the exciting things when thinking about this from the AI machine learning portion of the topic here is really just kind of that I was there when this started. I've been around too long. I've seen this technology kind of get its first foothold in this more consumer facing application, where you don't need to be a big, you need to be Amazon to have this functionality now. And so we really, it's been excited to being a part of this and seeing it kind of go from that small portion, really getting a foothold in the area and growing more and more and more and becoming just a kind of the forward leading feature that people are looking for now. And how can I help automate that search experience? How can I help really drive the best experience for visitors coming to my site? Whether that's content, whether that's commerce, whether it's just kind of it touches everything nowadays. So, really looking forward to having the conversation. And you know what? I've rambled on enough. Let's actually give you the information on what we're going to be covering as part of this session. So, after this session, what will you be able to take away from this? Well, really, we want you to be able to take away kind of three major bullet points about this, and all of this is going to be influenced through that machine learning and that kind of AI aspect of it, and really where we see this going. One of the key things that you're going to be hopefully able to take away from this presentation is that ability to track trends and recognize the patterns. This is something that is important to kind of how AI and machine learning is going to be developing further, and how you can leverage that within your own business and your own needs to really lean into that future and really be ready for that. One of the things, of course, is the product recommendations. This is something that is kind of key to machine learning and AI is the ability for it to automatically do this. And how is that going to be possible? How does that function? What are the different areas that makes sense in leveraging that functionality? And of course, kind of the bleeding edge of all of this is the personalization aspect of the customer's experience. Really going ahead and letting the machine understand the individual user's experience and customize that for them, bring back in the specific things that they're looking for. And really, this gives us the ability to think about this from a couple of different ways. And we're going to break this down to really kind of three major themes in terms of how we're going to talk about the future of AI and machine learning. We'll get into that in just a second, but it's a PowerPoint presentation. You got to start it off with a fun little graphic, right? So, what is the future of AI and machine learning? Well, as this chipper little robot does, it is, obviously invoking the Rosie the Riveter pose of old, is the "we can do it." Really, the idea here is just that the machines are going to be able to kind of offload a lot of that functionality for you, to take on that burden and really take over a lot of the kind of menial day-to-day tasks that used to be something that would, you'd have to block off time in your schedule and your calendar and make sure that you were giving yourself the time to go in and do that kind of nitty-gritty work and study these reports and learn from all these different kinds of relationships that can be built out. The robots, the machines, can now take care of that functionality for us. So this graphic just seemed kind of fitting. But what do we mean by that? What is the future of AI and machine learning? We're talking a lot about, how kind of where things have been in the past. Where are they going now? Well, really, what we kind of see this being the focus is the future of AI and machine learning is really just more of it. You might have heard me mention at the top of this conversation here about how really, having been here kind of when this all got started, it was something that was, it was novel, that you didn't need to be an Amazon to be able to do product recommendations. And this has been kind of something that has been being more and more exposed. And really, as we're seeing this trend go, really the big future of AI and machine learning is that it's just going to be available in more different places, more businesses, more organizations, associations. Everyone's going to be able to have access to this functionality and be able to leverage it for what their business needs are. And that's just going to only improve the functionality of it. As there's more of it out there, there's more exposure to it. People are able to expect more of it and understand kind of what they can get out of it. And so we want to give you kind of a little bit of a insight into that functionality. If there's going to be more of it available, if more businesses, more associations, and so on are going to be able to have access to this functionality, what does that actually look like? So let's start with the basics here. The wisdom of the crowd, machine learning. Now, this is probably something that you've heard before. Oh, it's the wisdom of the crowd, and really, this is kind of the initial level that has been out there, kind of from the get go. This was one of those kind of you're able to learn a lot about what your visitors are doing on the site by understanding in aggregate what is everyone really kind of doing here to help drive that functionality. So, what do we mean by this? Well, let's get into some examples here. So machine learning's wisdom of the crowd. This is your kind of standard, as I was saying, experience. These were the first ideas of how machine learning can be leveraged and where it has been in the past. So this is really we think about getting this functionality into more places, into more people's hands, into where you don't need to be that Amazon to be leveraging this. This is we want to make sure that we're covering some of the basics here. Wisdom of the crowd is still a very powerful functionality because what this is doing is learning from everyone's interactions on the site. You think about some of the later topics that we'll cover in terms of personalization. You have to account for sometimes when someone's first time visiting the site. You don't know anything about that visitor at that point in time, or what's trending. We're always kind of chasing whatever is coming next down the pike, and so leveraging this wisdom of the crowd, understanding the other signals that in aggregate everyone on your site is telling you, is very important. And this can be not just kind of big picture. This can be brought down into more specific examples. So here we're looking at the idea of I'm looking to purchase a bike. Maybe I'm going off roading. It's a mountain bike or something like that. Well, things you might want to suggest that were in the past were more manually driven of saying, okay, well, if we're going to show them this bike, we want to make sure that someone in marketing and product management needs to then go in and say, okay, make sure that you're also showing them then the bike lock and the helmet that would go with that. This is information now that can be gleaned automatically from that wisdom of the crowd because other visitors are making those searches and making those purchases along with that product on their own. They're helping you build out those relationships. This is leveraging that wisdom of the crowd. That maybe Susan bought this same bike and Susan also bought a lock and Susan also bought a helmet. Well, then when John comes to the site next week, he can take advantage of that wisdom of the crowd to understand that, well, in the past, Susan and Steve and Tommy, they all bought the same products. And so when I come to the site now, no one in the product marketing team needed to define these relationships. This is just something that was informed automatically by leveraging that wisdom of the crowd to say, well, when you're looking at this, here's what customers also bought. Leveraging that functionality to say the tool can now see what those relationships are and can leverage that to present those for you without your business needing to get involved. And so here's some examples of what we're talking about in more realistic terms. So here's an example of a site that is selling, modular drawers in the white color, taking advantage of those signals again to build out a whole plethora of options that don't need to then be expanded upon by a marketing team. And one of the other things that you can see here in this example is the little green check marks. This is just a UI element, but to streamline that and think about where we're going from the future, if you're really going to lean into this idea of frequently bought together, customers also bought, those kinds of strategies, you can go ahead and make this even easier for your visitors, I should say, to actually engage with those results. Select those checks, make it really easy. I mean, you've seen seen the same kind of function on Amazon where you can bundle that kind of group of products together and purchase it in one kind of go. Same idea here, but leveraging that wisdom of the crowd to understand that, well, when someone's buying that drawer, commonly they're buying more of those drawers. So, including that as part of the suggestions there, along with other examples in here in terms of the hampers and the drawing racks and so on. So another example of this functionality is to, where can you leverage this? So it's very common to have that on the product detail page where you're looking at the product detail page. And so we're showing you the examples of what customers have also bought. But this is an example of an interstitial. Notice at the top of this graphic here that it's saying added to cart. So, very commonly now when you're searching around on the site and you're getting ready to purchase something or you're clicking through on an article, there's a confirmation of this happening, added to cart here, like we're seeing in this example. And so from here in this interstitial, it's also a good area to leverage in that functionality of, hey, you're confirming that you've made this purchase, that you're added this to your cart. We're confirming that interaction. And now we're going to try and go for that cross sell and upsell functionality of showing you other ideas that you might be interested in. So in this example here, we've bought some red satin and now it's suggesting other satin products that again No one on the marketing team or merchandising team needed to make those relationships. This is just being informed from what the actual other visitors on this site are doing, leveraging those signals to understand what are the things that we might want to show in this use case here. And some other examples here, we want to make sure that we're not just focusing on the idea of customers also bought, which is really kind of one of the more powerful ones when we're thinking about really helping increasing that ROI and improving your kind of average order value. But you can see here in this example where we're looking at purchasing some jeans. Well, one of the other things that you can leverage this wisdom of the crowd kind of mentality for are things like others also viewed. So one of the things to keep in mind when you're thinking about customers' experiences on a site like this is that there's this idea of researching. You might not be ready to actually pull the trigger yet on that product, or in nowadays the product might be out of stock as well. It's a very common thing that we're seeing with kind of the supply constraints going on right now, and especially as we get towards the holiday season here, it's going to be even more important to make sure that you're not just saying here's the product that you were looking for, but here's alternatives to that. So leveraging these two different strategies of others also viewed. So I've looked at this. What else have I also looked at? And leveraging those signals to then say to the next visitor who looks at these products, well, what else did that someone else who looked at this also view? But then going that extra step further of saying, well, what else did people buy after viewing this? Really kind of helping solidify that, well, maybe this might not be exactly for you. And here's what other people might have been interested in, but here's what other people actually purchased. Because that does communicate to the visitors on a site like this that, okay, not only was this something that someone else actually looked into, but this was something they actually went ahead and purchased. This is something that someone laid down their money to actually own, and so this engages me on another level to encourage me to look at these products. But again, all of this information is being kind of sourced from your visitors to your site. What are those interactions? What else are you viewing? What else are you viewing and then buying? Taking advantage of those kinds of strategies to really help inform that initial level. Now, another area that we want to make sure that we're really not just focusing on this in terms of the idea of commerce, which I think is really kind of something to keep in mind, is that it's a I think this kind of idea gets caught up in the idea of that it needs to be products. It needs to be you're viewing this, so then we're going to show you this other thing that you might want to buy. When we're thinking about wisdom of the crowd and kind of sourcing alternative suggestions for visitors, this doesn't need to just be a commerce example here. When we're looking at this example, this is an example of a higher education facility that is, wanting to promote their master gardener course, their program. They have lots of information around this. So I'm not going to be purchasing anything around the master gardener course. This is something that I'm just interested in. I want to learn more about this. What are the news and articles, the events, and so on? This is an example of taking that wisdom of the crowd and being able to leverage that functionality in a new way to present information that isn't just customers also bought, but taking that signal of what else have they viewed, what else have they viewed, and then maybe interacted with further. Did they download that PDF? Did they sign up for that event? Those kind of signals can then be used in this experience. We're thinking about not a product driven experience, but a content driven experience where we can take those same kinds of signals and use those in a content experience to say, okay, here are the suggested news and articles that are related to what you're currently looking at, as well as events and publications and so on, using those same kind of signals, but in a non-commerce fashion. So just keep in mind, while the kind of primary thrust of this might be more e-commerce, these same kinds of methodologies can be leveraged for associations, higher education, hospital organizations. This really does not have a limit in terms of its application. It's more about kind of how you think about those signals that are being gathered. And so one of the things that we do want to highlight as well when we're thinking about this kind of wisdom of the crowd is that this can also be leveraged within a search context. So one of the things that from the Hawk search end that we do is we actually leverage those signals of, well, what are visitors interacting with? What are visitors adding to cart? What are visitors actually converting off of? To help further improve the search experience there. So these examples are the different sliders that we use in our tooling to help influence that. Now, this is not just necessarily limited to only Hawk search, but just to give you an examples of ways that you can continue to leverage those wisdoms of the crowd, those what are visitors interacting with, what are they adding to cart, what are they converting off of, to help further improve the experience beyond that idea of here's just some suggestions within a product detail page of what customers also bought. Leverage those signals to help improve your search experience, because if you think about it from a practical point of view, if I come to your site and I do a keyword search, well, you want to kind of make sure, of course, that you're checking off that relevancy end of things, but there is this idea of using the other signals to make sure that not only am I seeing the most relevant results, but also what is going to be most likely that I'm looking for. And by using those other signals of, well, what are visitors engaging with? What are they adding to cart? And what are they converting off of? You can be very confident in the results that are being returned are not only going to match what the visitor has typed in, but that it's going to be something that will lead towards those desired interactions. And again, thinking about this outside the commerce space, while we're saying add to cart and orders, those could be things like, did they download that PDF? Did they sign up for that course? Whatever those additional kind of KPIs are, we can layer that in and use those signals then to help again leverage that wisdom of the crowd to improve not only the your kind of standard carousels that you're used to, but really inform the search experience that it's the best that it can be. So let's move on to the second kind of wisdom that we're talking about here. I told you at the top of the call there's going to be three kind of disciplines that we're thinking about. The first one has been, of course, that wisdom of the crowd. The secondary one that we're going to talk about is really one of the more interesting ones because I think this is one that can really help be very, very specific. If the wisdom of the crowd is kind of relying on the intelligence of a crowd, which we all know can be sometimes questionable, wisdom of the content is really just leveraging the hard work that you have put into your product line, your content line, and being able to help leverage the signals within that to help make really specific recommendations. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So, wisdom of the content. Well, the example that we always like to talk about, because it just makes real sense when you're thinking about it from a practical sense, is this idea of if you're buying a bottle, you say you're in a B2B distribution environment. You're a small business and you're looking to make purchases for your bottling jars or your whatever the use case might be. When you're looking to buy that bottle might not come with a cap. And so you want to make sure that you're making suggestions for the caps that would go along with that. But the wisdom of the content is specific, and it's not just the idea of, well, what if other visitors bought with this particular bottle? Because maybe the visitors didn't know that there was a specific thread type on that bottle or that it was a different size on that bottle. And so they bought the wrong thing. With the recommended accessories and using the wisdom of the content strategies, you're leveraging the product detail to say, well, as a recommendation and using that machine learning, it knows that all the details, all the attributes about that product, what's the size of it, what's the color, what's the thread type on that on the opening, what size is that opening, and conversely, it knows all the same information around the caps that would go along with that. So, what are the thread types of those caps? What category do they belong into? Well, they're in the caps catalog category. All of that information. What size opening do they have? Using those informations, you can be very specific that these caps that you're showing are going to exactly match the bottle that you're looking at because it's taking advantage of all of that data and cross-referencing it. It's using the content that you've invested into to make those suggestions. Another good example that we're seeing here is this compare similar items. So comparing similar items is again taking advantage of the data, the content around that product. So we were just talking before about the idea of, well, what if customers also viewed? If you're in that research phase of the experience on a product detail page, what might you be also interested in? Well, one example is to leverage that wisdom of the crowd to show what customers also viewed or viewed then bought. But this is a more hyper specific example of leveraging the fact that if you've landed on a product detail page like this, you've most likely indicated that you're looking for a particular size, a particular color, a brand name, perhaps. All of those are content that the machine learning can leverage to then say, okay, well, if we're looking at this, we want to make sure that we're showing the visitor not just what other customers have also viewed. Maybe there's a very big brand loyalty in this space. We want to make sure that we're showing them similar products from the same brand and manufacturer. Maybe we know that size is very important in this space. So we want to make sure that not only are we showing you products from the same brand, but also of a similar capacity in this case. Maybe it's just the coloring that might be different. Um, this is just leveraging the information that we have around the content catalog, the product catalog, to take those signals and infer those relationships again automatically, where it's not someone's job to go in through and make those relationships be built out manually. We're taking that information from the content. So let's give you some more practical examples here. So in this example here, we're looking at a hockey stick. I'm looking to buy a hockey stick. Well, instead of using the, well, customers also bought these sticks, this idea of leveraging the more like this, similar items, is taking advantage of the same kind of truck ideas that we are just talking about, where on this example, the division that I'm in, the senior division, there's kids, there's, teens, and then there's adults. In this case, senior is the terminology that they're using. Very important. You don't want to be showing me kids sticks because they're not going to be appropriate for what I'm looking to purchase. So the suggestions that are being made here are using that content that is known about the product. I am looking at this Bauer Nexus E5 Pro Grip Composite Hockey Stick Senior. Well, you'll notice the similar suggestions that are being made down there in the graphic that we have are other senior level sticks. All of these are senior in class, meaning that they're all going to be of the same appropriate size for me. Another example here is that these are also primarily other Bauer Nexus or Bauer brand, I should say, examples where because I have indicated that what I'm specifically looking for is this Bauer branded senior stick, not only are the sticks being kind of initially filtered against the idea of senior class, we're also primarily leaning into the fact that these are Bauer branded. And that's something else to think of when we're thinking about the wisdom of the content, is that this can be kind of a cascading fit where senior is the absolute must be matched suggestion using the content. We want to make sure that we are definitely checking that, because if it doesn't check that, if it doesn't match that level of content matching, it's not going to be applicable to the person actually looking for the recommendations. But then from there, you can take a step down and say, well, in general, we would also like to make sure that we're making suggestions from a similar brand. But if we don't have enough of those brands to make suggestions, well, we don't want to just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's go ahead and make suggestions from other brands that might also be applicable. So you'll see the first three suggestions in this example are from the Bauer brand. The fourth example is from a different brand, but all of them are from the senior division. That's leveraging that wisdom of the content to make informed suggestions for those visitors. And just to give you a practical example here, I won't spend a lot of time on this because I kind of talked through it on the generic examples there. But the idea here of leveraging those caps to make suggestions for the fact that if we look here, we've got an 8-ounce clear PET plastic straight-sided jar, cap not included. But if you'll notice, part of that product data there is that cap size of 70 to 400. So that is specifically the recommended caps that were being shown there, that 70 to 400 caps. Similarly, comparing similar products, we're also looking at other clear PET plastic straight-sided jars, just different ounces, different capacities of the volume there. So again, leveraging the content to inform what those suggestions are and making it very specific. This is, one of the ways that you can really start to take advantage of all the hard work that you're putting into making sure that your content catalog is well defined, that you have good attributes, that you have good data. Take advantage of that. Let the machine start to leverage that and do the hard work for you of building out those relationships. This is a fun example because, again, to keep an eye on the idea of, we don't want to just only focus on the idea of a commerce example. This has a little bit of a commerce bent to it, but it's using it in a very interesting way. So this is an idea of a blog post, Creeping Beauty Halloween Party. Halloween just passed a few weeks ago here. In preparation, this company put out a blog post saying, hey, here's how you can throw a really themed kind of Halloween party. Instead of Sleeping Beauty, it's Creeping Beauty. So a nice little pun and play on word there. But in addition to the content that's being displayed there, in terms of here's how you would set up for that party and everything like that, they're also leveraging recommendations to say, well, here's what you'll need. And this is not being informed through a lot of product manager, saying, oh, well, let's show this and this and this. This is really leveraging the fact that we know what kind of category this is. This is a Halloween party. And then what are the accessories that would typically go along with that? So this is really using the content of this article to inform the suggestions that are being made to be able to pick out the important pieces from that. Of this is the category of content that we're looking at. So this is the category of products that we're going to be looking for. Well, we're just looking also for party as well as another attribute that we can pull against to say these are the things that we're going to suggest. So this can be a lot more dynamic. It doesn't need to just be a kind of commerce example to make those suggestions. But one of the most important ones, I want to make sure that we're not just kind of powering through here, but one of the things that we do want to make sure that we're covering at least a little bit in depth, because as I mentioned at the top of the call, this is really kind of the bleeding edge of that functionality in terms of how this is being layered down now into those clients that are not just the Amazons of the world. Is that wisdom of you? So if we talk about the wisdom of the wisdom of the crowd, which is here's what everyone's doing. We talk about the wisdom of the content, which is, well, what is the actual product or content telling you about that you might want to suggest? The wisdom of you is that, well, you know best. You know what you're actually going to be interested in. And the machine learning and AI can now use those signals to help drive that personalization. So what do we mean by that? So again, we've got some kind of mock-ups here, some examples of what we're talking about, of saying, well, if you're looking for a particular kind of product, what have you bought in the past? Making those suggestions to use that information to say, okay, here are the specific examples that we think based off of the brands that you looked at, the products that you've interacted with, the colors that you've navigated to. Maybe we're very specific to ratings and ranges. You can use that information. Really, any of the signals that you might be able to track about an individual visitor, use those to inform something like you may also like. And then also being able to inform based off of geographic information, using the signals that you know about where a visitor is coming from to say, well, who's looking for jackets in California? What they're going to be looking for is very different than what we're looking for in Chicago here, where I'm at in terms of jackets. We're going to be looking for those heavier jackets in terms of doing a keyword search like that. So, this used to be, as I was just kind of mentioned a couple of times, these used to be kind of strategies that were only really available to your major tech companies, your Spotify's, your Amazons, your Netflixes. But that speaks to the importance of the fact that these are now being brought down to, tools like HawkSearch, where they can be brought out and leveraged on your individual store. You don't need to be a Spotify now to leverage that. But the fact that all of these major companies are leveraging this personalization speaks to its importance. And if through your own personal experience, you probably understand the benefit of that. Of how often have you interacted with your Discover Weekly playlist on Spotify that's guided you towards artists that you might be interested in. Similarly, I mean, the whole business model of Netflix, I think something like 70 to 80% of what visitors actually engage with on Netflix is driven through recommendations and personalization. So let's bring that back into the actual kind of clients that we're talking about here. So here's an example again of that just for you. You might be looking at a particular product, leverage those signals to inform what you're at an individual level are going to be looking for. So maybe I've bought particular brand names in the past. I've bought from a particular category. I'm price conscious. Leverage those signals to help drive suggestions like just for you. But also, let's not just think about this from a retail perspective. In the B2B space, there can be a very good leverage point. It can be a really big kind of turnaround for you to do things like order history, another form of personalization. You know what the visitor has previously purchased in the past. And in the B2B space, a lot of that is just reordering that information over and over and over again. So leverage that as a form of personalization to really get into helping improve the business by driving that functionality. Other examples of personalization, recently viewed. So it's not just what is the tool understanding that I might be interested in and making those suggestions kind of ad hoc to what I'm looking at, but leveraging the interactions that a visitor has had on the site. So it's a good way to kind of re-engage with someone. If you land back on a homepage, someone is they see an example like this of your recently viewed items. They're immediately brought back to what they were last looking at. They're reminded of what they might have been looking for before, or you're helping them get right back to where they had left off in their hunt. So leverage those signals of what have I interacted with, leverage strategies like your recent views to help improve that engagement. And something else to keep in mind of, we talked earlier about the idea of taking advantage of those signals to help inform search. So there is this idea of being able to take the recommendations from personalization and bring those back into the other search experiences. So we're looking at not only where customers add into cart, what are they converting off of, what are they interacting with, but also let's look at that personalization and bring that into suggesting other items on an individual level. So I've done a search for jackets. Well, not only are you going to suggest items that are specific for where I'm physically located at, but what are the brands that I've bought in the past? What are the sizes that I'm going to be looking for? What gender am I shopping for? Using those signals, they'll make sure that from a search perspective, you're bringing back in the most relevant recommendations for that. And we're also showing other examples here of ideas for add to cart for me, buy for me, view for me. So again, taking that personalization and running it through kind of that wisdom of the crowd idea of, well, add to cart for me. That's taking an add to cart. What if customers also added to cart, and then filtering it against this idea of, well, what am I personally going to be interested in? So really kind of combining those two ideas here. The title of this slide being machines learning wisdoms of the crowd. There, taking those two ideas and really kind of marrying them together. Of it's taking strategies like something like what have customers also viewed, and then not only doing that through also viewed and bought, but also viewed that I'm personally going to be interested in. It's going to be a really powerful kind of tool to help drive that functionality. And really, again, talking about bleeding edge and where we see the future going, this is one of those ideas. So that was a bunch of information to kind of throw at you guys there. Hopefully, you got a lot of good information out of this. Really do appreciate you guys taking the time to join me on this journey as we go through the future of AI and e-commerce machine learning. Hopefully, you learned a lot of good information, and thank you to the SMX team for inviting us out. We'll look forward to the next presentation. Have a great day, everyone.